Welcome back to the Clubroom. My name is Mark Moyer, and this is brought to you by Win Again. And tonight, I'm really excited to have a gentleman who I just met recently. His name is Phil Mangan, and he's got really an impressive background. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I'd like to thank Debbie Kleiman of the Players Impact for making the introduction. I really, truly appreciate that. It's really the power of networking and so many fantastic collaborations and relationships that are made, especially here in the Clubroom, where a lot of people that come in here, it's really a focus on everybody helping each other and everybody elevating each other's games and making introductions that can truly help each other with our careers, our businesses, our everything that we're doing. So again, thanks everybody for being here. And a couple quick words about Phil before I bring him in. First of all, Phil was born and pretty much raised, or maybe I'm going to get that almost wrong, but in Gananoque, Ontario. And the big reason why I know Gananoque is that they've got a casino there, and it's possible that the citizens of Gananoque, or wherever the money goes, are better off because of my appearance at the casino. So thanks, all of you can thank me later in Gananoque. So Phil was born and raised there. In 2002, he began his professional career, hockey career, and he was playing in Kingston. And he played there for 5 years in junior hockey, and then went to college in, I just learned today, a couple hours outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia, at a place called St. Francis Xavier University. And then he played a couple years in the ECHL. He retired back in 2014. But then what he did was he decided, well, look, you know what? I'm done playing, but I can probably be a really good coach. And he was, and he did that for a couple of years. And then most recently, he's founded Struttur Sports. And what he's calling it is basically an e-learning platform that really combines or partners with world-class players in a variety of sports to really deliver some athletic development content that's cutting edge, it's top of the line. I mean, this is not meant to be sort of YouTube where you can get all kinds of crappy stuff. This is a fantastic platform. It's called Struttur Sports, and Phil is here. Come on in, Phil, and I truly appreciate you being here. Phil is up in Ontario now, where it's, I think, a lovely weather. I'm assuming it's a beautiful spring day. Was.
We actually had a beautiful day today, Mark, and I honestly have to say that you were really close in Gananoque. Not many people, including Debbie Kleiman, who you just introduced me or had the introduction from, could have even a hope of saying that right. But yeah, you did a great job.
Gananoque.
Gananoque.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I've been there a few too many times, and the best part about gambling in Gananoque is the breakfast afterwards, when you either count your money or you don't count your money. So anyways, but thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. And really what I want to do is jump right in and talk about, you had a hockey career just like so many young men and women in Canada do. And then you played, and, give me a sense of, maybe throw out one of your highlights, one of the things that you look back on fondly and say, wow, that was really awesome that I had a chance to do blank in the sport.
I think for me, I mean, I never made it to the NHL, which is obviously the dream for most young hockey players and even in junior. But for me, it was the opportunity to play overseas, exploring a new culture, lifestyle, all while being paid for and having the experiences. I'll never forget, I went to Norway for a year. Now my wife, but then my girlfriend, we got to share 9 months together. We had a restaurant that we could eat at every night for free. It was, in Norway is a little bit different. There's not too many restrictions, but it was wild cod or wild whatever meat it was that was hunted that day. And truly a life that we never look back on. And I think that's something that you look back on and say, wow, I really got to travel the world. And it influences you. And not to mention, you make new friends, and there were so many great things that came from that.
That's great. And what's interesting is that hockey is I think like other sports, but hockey is a very, very strong community. One of the things that I found was, I play now, and I've been playing in a sort of men's league for many years, and the connections that are made, it's like it's an instant bond when you say you play hockey with somebody else that plays. It's something where you kind of nod your head knowing, okay, you've shared that experience. And one of the things that I've seen with hockey players and with those who have retired is that there is really it's such a strong network. And speaking of that strong network, when you did retire in 2014, tell me a little bit about what you did or did not do at that time to prepare for that transition.
First of all, I agree with what you're saying, and as far as hockey players and the culture and the networking
Yeah,
ability behind each player, it's anybody who's been to university town or gone to college know when you go to the bar that the hockey players are usually the glue to the every sports person or individual in that bar, whether it's basketball, baseball, or so forth. We're kind of always in the middle and making and mingling together with everybody. So yeah, I think I would in the life of every party. Why that is, it must come from the culture. But I think when I stopped playing, for one, it's never easy. I don't think anything can ever prepare you for that transition and what you could have done or maybe regretted not doing. But I think is what you try to remember is the mentality and the disciplines and the attitudes you had while playing, how you can convert that to everyday living, whether it's having a family or starting a new job. My company right now, or our company, Struttur Sports, is going through a seed round fundraising, which is grueling, and I feel like I'm in training camp every day. So
yeah.
I think one of the things you can learn is or remember is like how do you fail and how do you have strategies for failing and getting back up again and going at it the next day. Know that you can always improve and keep those attitudes alive. So like I say, I don't think anything can ever actually prepare you for a transition post playing, but it's definitely the characteristics that you develop while being an athlete that are your survival mechanisms moving forward.
So, so in your case, though, so when you decided it was, I mean, it's funny because most people, virtually every athlete really doesn't want to retire when they have to retire, right? And it's something that it's almost like they go out kicking and screaming to an extent, where they're reluctant to admit that their skill set may have been going downhill a little bit, or their injuries are piling up, or whatever it might be. What was it in your case that gave you the sense of like, you know what, I don't know if I can get this going for another season?
If for me in hockey, the minors are probably one of the hardest grinds of any sport. I know baseball, obviously the publicity that they've gone through is pretty bad as well. But you're playing 82 games and traveling across the
Yeah,
country on a bus. Um, you're getting beat up every night, blocking shots, and eating Denny's every morning on the road. So I
yeah.
was 27 at the time. I could have easily played till I was 32, 33. Um, Financially, I just realized that if I wanted to ever have a family and have a chance at financial success, I think I knew it was time. Like you say, you don't ever want to quit, but mentally, I had to make the decision whether I wanted something else out of this life, and that's ultimately what it came down to is not the actual physical ability and love and passion for the game, but more strategically was a decision for me. And it's tough. And even when you make the decision, you still don't feel like you've actually made it. But ultimately, I was starting a new life and a new chapter. And I knew that if I wanted other things, um, and I also was I've been involved in youth development programs, running myself and helping somebody like Kirk Muller, who was with the Montreal Canadiens at the time. I was doing a lot of development, and I thought, what better way to continue the passion? And it's
Absolutely.
continued ever since, and here I am. But I don't think anybody ever really wants to stop. But I think strategically, people just decide, okay, it's time.
I'm a little disappointed that you said you got tired of the Denny's thing. Denny's is fantastic food, by the way, everybody. We're not sponsored by
Yeah.
Denny's yet, but I may have to go after that soon. Anyways, you're like, no more. Have you ever been in Denny's since, or it's like, is that like I
One
don't know.
time, and it was a
Yeah.
terrible experience.
All right. Anyways, so tell me a little bit about what was the experience like to be coaching versus playing, because it's obviously a completely different perspective.
I think everybody the second best thing is the coach. There's not too many players that actually just like dive into the financial world or
Right.
a 9 to 5 job. I think it's coaching is the next look into their life, and for me, I said I was already involved in youth development. I do want a little stability, and I ended up working the first year from Kings and Frontenacs. I was an eye in the sky, they called it, where
Yeah.
you sit up in the press box and you kind of radio down, kind of help out the head coach and assistant coach about what's going on from the bird's eye view. I just said, listen, I'm going to get my foot in the door in major junior hockey. It's very competitive for coaching. So I was like, here's my first step in my new chapter. And it's not that I mean, I've hence now quit coaching, but it's not that you ever really want to quit
Mhm.
passing on the knowledge and resources that you've learned along your journey to others and the next generation. It's just a matter of how you can do it more efficiently. And for me, while coaching, it was an unbelievable experience getting to work with world-class talent and up and coming talent. And, Jason Robinson of the Dallas Stars was a finalist for the Calder Cup last year. I spent almost every day after practicing for 3 years. And it's amazing what you learn from those kids. And it's amazing how the interaction with people who love and have a passion for something is uh, is very inspiring. So I think you learn a little bit about yourself and a lot about others and how to just relate to people. So the transition was awesome. It definitely took some time. That eye in the sky period was a great breakthrough period for me. The mindset has to adapt from being able to communicate rather than just reacting. As a player, you're always reacting and go, 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 go. Whereas coaches, you have to kind of think ahead and transition that, you know, method of coaching that you're trying to inspire within them. So it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And then once the 4 years came around, I realized that I want larger scale influence, and that's what kind of brought me to what I'm doing today. But I'm still ultimately coaching, and I'm still connecting and helping the next generation be inspired, but just through today's world class players on a larger scale.
Well, it is, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because the transition actually makes much more sense from what we did than people may from the outside. They may say, "Wait, he left coaching hockey to starting a new tech platform or something." Well, no, I mean you left coaching to continue coaching, but now you're, as you said, you're now doing it on a really really interesting platform. So tell me, give me the short version of what was it that inspired you to do this? What made you wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm going to start this new business and this is what it's going to be.
I think when you're in that personal one-on-one setting within coaching in the Ontario Hockey League, which is, I believe, still to this day over 50 junior player or NHL players come from major junior hockey in Canada. And I think once you realize when you provide that direct access and monumental knowledge to those players, it's amazing how many kids and youth in the world don't get access to that information. So for me, rather than helping, say 5 to 10 to maybe 20 players, I mean, you ultimately don't have an influence over all 20 you'd like to, but it's very, very tough. It was a matter of how can I take this knowledge and resource that I'm passing down from the NHL to these junior players, and how can I do that to a larger scale? So ultimately, I am trying to coach and inspire the next generation every day. However, now I'm just connecting with multiple players that are playing the game and emerging, and trying to take the youth and their communities and fans along a ride for the journey. So I really just trying to do the exact same thing I've always done since I started coaching and bring it to a larger scale. Sports or multiple sports, excuse me. So it's I mean, all the variables of being a sports tech platform and fundraising and networking, those are just extra variables that go along with the business side of things. But really, at the end of the day, I'm just translating information from world class players to the next generation and their fans.
Now, but what was it that, I mean, how on earth did you come to this? I mean, it's not everybody that goes to sleep, wakes up in the morning and says, tech platform, that's what I'm going to do. What inspired that?
Truthfully, I don't know if I have an answer for that. However, you look at the opportunity that tech is providing today.
Yeah.
You look at what the influence of today's emerging athletes and today's world class athletes have on their communities, and I think is what tech is doing is inspiring those communities to for a more direct access, inspiring them for a closer look and behind the scenes. So I think the ultimate play was to use today's tech, and especially with how tech is really evolving and becoming we're becoming so frictionless for everybody to use. I think it was the only way I was going to have that larger play, in my opinion. So I think it was kind of by default, let's call it, that I wanted to, okay, if I can do this within my community, how can I take Jason Robertson and make him um, like the first two Filipinos to ever play in the NHL? How can we
Wow.
take his knowledge and resources and reach that entire community that backed them all the way?
Right. That's fantastic. So,
Today's tech is amazing, as we all know. So
yeah.
it's really inspiring to open the doors and create that accessibility um, for everybody.
So describe for us real quickly, a little bit more about Struttur Sports and, what the platform is today, but maybe more importantly, where you really want to grow it, especially once you get some more of the funding. How can you really take it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a crazy transition for us since that day one of thinking what we can do and building out a beta that was a masterclass type platform where we were taking or partnering with world class players to get them to share their journey and details of development for everybody to see. We've since then transitioned or pivoted, as they say, to Patreon. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the creator economy platform, Patreon, where we're partnering with world class players and emerging talent to connect them with their communities to inspire and allow them to develop alongside these emerging players. And with the ownership economy coming into play and athletes wanting to be the CEO of their journey, and we believe that knowledge creators like athletes are the future entrepreneurs of the world. How can we use tech to theirs, and how can we use tech to bring them along for the ride of their development process? You take somebody like Tiger Woods. If you could look back and start from when he began his career and in his development process as an athlete, if you knew the fundamentals and the foundation that he built off of and the techniques that he transitioned along the way and had that kind of on a timeline, how valuable that would be to every generation around him, and not to mention how we can learn from that moving forward. So ultimately, if we community around these athletes using today's tech and go and have their community go along for the ride is where we've since transitioned to and are building in the background right now.
So, is there an ideal, I don't want to say an ideal user because I don't want to narrow it down, I guess, but so conceptually, let's say maybe I play here in the States, I'm playing hockey at the high school level and I'm a pretty good prospect. And I'm having, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm trying to learn, let's say, how to, I don't know, do a better wrist shot that's more on target. And I'm just not getting that from my coaches. Can I effectively go to Struttur Sports and join the platform and then access different current and former players who would give that sort of guidance? Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. No, as far as the primary user right now is a caregiver or parent from ages 6 to 12. And why I
Oh,
say that is
interesting.
because
Mm.
the development process when you go from ages 6 to 12 is a major process in the youth development. It's responsibility of the parent and caregiver to provide the most opportunity for that child or youth, and I think that's what we can help inspire into those responsible caregivers, because ultimately if they don't get the opportunity or provide the opportunity, can that child or youth develop to their full potential? From the athletes alone, their perspective is we're not necessarily asking them to coach, we're asking them to be who they are and showcase what made them great and what the details of their game are, um, that has made them great along the way. So we believe more in the leadership and the mentoring model than actually coaching. I don't believe active players should be coaching, like we talked about. It took 2 years
Yeah.
of a change of mindset for myself. So do want to help impact those caregivers and parents of ages 6 to 12, so they can, hey, this is what it takes to be a midfield kicker. This is what it takes to be a two-way centerman. This is what it takes to be great at face-offs, and therefore connect 5 to 7 individuals who have been there, done that, and have paved the way themselves and translate that information back. Uh, so it's all about the individuality in connecting those performance characteristics with the right.
And but it's interesting you say that because a lot of times that the care, as you say, the caregivers, I guess, whether it's parents, guardians, whoever they are that are overseeing this child. Um, a lot of times they think they know what's best in terms of skill set because oh back in the day when they played or something. I'm sure you hear that a lot. But are they so they're the ones that are coming onto the platform. I think you had mentioned earlier to me that you're also trying to grow and make this a community so that the those caregivers can interact with each other, right? Or do you want it to be more of the experts interacting, or both?
Yeah, ultimately it's both.
Mm,
Communities, I mean, athletes are first of all the community or the heart of every community around the world. So, I mean, connecting athletes with other athletes going through the process, I think is going to be a major part of our community. But ultimately, a 15-year-old in Toronto is going to want to know what's doing and who they can relate with, whether they're the same type of identity of player, whether they have the same experiences as a player. So that community is going to be a large portion, no question. I think um, and nobody develops alone. I mean, it takes many variables to develop as an athlete, and it takes a ton of support to develop as an athlete. So, really, truly enhancing that development process. We always tell the athlete that we partner with, your best asset as a player is how you are, not when you win a scoring title or not when you win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, those are great moments, but it's that actual asset of how you became who you are. That's the valuable part to your community. So we're really focused on that aspect.
good. So back to the platform itself, because I want to talk now a little bit on the business side because I'm always excited and thrilled about athletes that have made that transition to entrepreneurs because it's something it's a common path, but not always a successful one. Now I know that you've partnered recently with TPI, which is the Players Impact, and you've been able to give a presentation to their membership about getting some funding and so forth. But on that business side, what do you think are for everybody out here? What have been, list a couple of the challenges that you've faced in getting to where you are now? Because right now you've got a really sharp looking website, and you got the platform started and up and running, and you're trying to get the word out and so forth. But what are some of the struggles that you went through, or some of the things that happened to you that you didn't necessarily expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. The number one thing I'll say is that the sports community, I think, is arguably the best community in the world. I'm biased, obviously, a lifetime journey in hockey, and I believe that hockey players are the best athletes going. And again, biased. I think is what you don't realize is how many other communities and networks in the world there are outside of sports once you're done playing. And for me, I had this huge vision and had the foundation helped with TPI. We got that roadmap figured out. I think is what was really the next challenge was actually building a community within the sports tech world and amongst venture capitalists or angels. And I think that's something I took for granted where I was going to build a business, going to build how the athletes on board and agents on board. And then all of a sudden you need to actually bring the business side of it into play and say, okay, how are we going to raise the money to put this into fruition and make this a global company? And that hasn't happened overnight. We've basically spent the last 6 months just networking and putting ourselves out there and trying out, as I like to say, in front of VCs every day. It's a roller coaster, lots of failures, lots of ups and downs, but ultimately just creating that new for our team. And as a first time founder, um, it's not and I mean, nothing's easy in this world or in business or in life, but it's definitely not an easy ride if you haven't exited a company or if you don't have experience working at a startup before. The questions are going to come high and hard. So you need to be well prepared going into those pitches. But it's definitely been a challenge is creating a new ecosystem for myself and our team to actually make this. I said,
So I'm going to put you on the spot just a teensy bit, but there's a reason for it. Um,
go for it.
so give me a sense of, what are, because when you speak to all these people, what is one of their biggest, I guess, concerns that you've got a way around it? So in other words, what are some of the doubts that they've got that you say, well, here's how we cure that?
Another great question. The first that came to mind was myself and three other founders. And being a first time founder, like I said, is obviously not easy. So if we have that against us, then we got to build a more complete team around us.
Right.
And out and putting all the pieces together. And as same within development, as nobody does anything alone, we built a phenomenal team, athlete advisors, anybody from four-time Olympics to potentially the first overall NFL pick this coming weekend. So we've built a very robust athlete advisor group around us, and then actually business advisors. So putting that team together, so when they come back and say first-time founder, yeah, that's true, but I have all the support around me, and they're only going to uplift me and help me in this venture. So that would have been the first thing. I think the second thing is, I mean, I'm a connector. I mean, obviously the CEO of Struttur Sports. I think you have to learn how to date, and I don't think having proven that in this field before has been very motivating for a lot of VCs. There's a lot of obviously VCs that are out there that like to have proven founders behind them. So I think really having a proven business behind you is something that has been a challenge, and trying to overcome that is, I back it up with, I was an athlete. Adversity is basically your best friend, and learning how to fail and having a strategy for how to fail fast is, I think I can respond with.
That's great. And it's so true. I mean, if there's anybody to, I guess, back or lean on as a startup, it is a former athlete who's experienced not just the ups and downs and have grown accustomed to that, but also someone who's pushes past adversity, pushes through things. The tenacity, the grit, the ability to overcome and work past injury. Where there's so many virtues that an athlete has that I think really puts you at an advantage. That sometimes athletes say, "Oh, but I'm not a business person," or "I didn't go, I didn't work those first 10 years out of school or whatever. I played hockey, I played a sport, so I'm behind." Well, I say you're not behind, you're different, and you bring a lot of other stuff to the table. So there's so many, I believe, advantages that athletes have that I think is going to really help you out with this. Just super fast, we do have a couple questions in the Q&A section that I want to jump to real quick. Natalie's asking that and says, it looks like right now your platform is focused on hockey. Are you planning on expanding into other sports?
Yeah, that's actually something I didn't mention. It's a great question. Is
Mm,
we did a lot of the test groups within hockey and my connections. However, we'll have about 25 across and 10 golf young golfers coming up, and some PGA golfers that will be on the platform where we're just working on right now. I mentioned the first overall pick. Potentially, I think it will be, if not second. So football is on our radar. It's out there. So our goal is 8 sports in the first 2 years, to look at it from a high level.
so does that, I mean, that baseball, hoops, that sort of thing, or is it just strictly curling?
we have we have a couple niche sports that we do. I think something like USA, excuse me, cycling, especially in the USA, has grown massively in the last year or two, especially with the pandemic.
Mm,
But I think there's some really cool that we'd love to get into. I'd love to get into rugby, um,
yeah,
and even
great.
something like volleyball. But when we say niche, I also want to say, when we talk about golf, I'd love to support women's golf more and create financial stability. We do a rev share model with the players for all our partnerships with them. So we're trying to, have financial sustainability within their careers and monetize their development process for them. So I'd love to focus really on and niches in the sports as well.
That's interesting. So Jonathan asks, your platform seems to be focused on the hard hockey skills, right? Do you want to integrate some other forms of coaching, whether it's the mental side or social side of things?
Absolutely, another great question, and something we've had a lot of feedback on. I will mention to everybody that is data that is about to be updated very in the near future, let's say, and is what we're focusing on. Obviously, is we've built pillars out, whether they're fitness, or excuse me, we've built pillars of content into fitness development, health, and wellness, to cover all aspects. We do have a ton of footage for things away from the playing surfaces, and that's definitely a high priority and a complete market on its own.
That's awesome. Look, we have, just so you know, and when we're done here, I'm going to want to make sure that you speak to a couple other folks here that have started, run, exited, all kinds of things with companies. So you're in good hands here. I do want to drop one last question on you from Matt, who Matt's one of my favorite guys here. He runs a company called Ticket Time Machine, and I love what he does because he creates actual hard copy souvenirs and tickets of events that now that everybody's going to the whole digital stuff, it's really awesome. But his question, he's down in Florida, and so he's curious to know, who are you leaning on for the cup? Are you a fan of a team, or are you not necessarily? What's your story?
I have to admit that I wouldn't mind seeing the Leafs get past the first round, just because I think the city deserves it. And I could probably get punched in the face by a lot of people for saying that, but I don't think you can count out Tampa Bay. And I also believe that Colorado's got a chip on their shoulder. I think the city of Denver's, yeah, New York. Yeah, I think they got a long ways to go, but there, there's a lot of Colorado's got a lot of players with a chip on their shoulder, and it's right timing maybe for a team like that.
Good, maybe we'll see. Offline, you and I are going to have a little bet on the Rangers. Anyways, well, look, there's a lot more that we can talk about here, and I do want to just ask a couple of other last minute questions. Give me, for whether it's parents or younger athletes or even older athletes, give me a couple of bits of advice that you would give an athlete to to maybe be ready for and prepare for life after sports. What based on what you went through, give me a piece of advice.
I think the one thing I'll go back to is having a strategy, at least narrowing in on a strategy on how to fail. I think that's helped me immensely. There's so much failure in this world, and there's so much good that can come from that. And I don't think in sports it's necessarily looked at as a great thing. Obviously, if you don't make a team or you don't get enough playing time, failures usually result in a negative impact. But I think having strategies for how to rebound, and you're going to continue that as the older you get in life, as we all know, as it gets harder and harder. So I really think people don't focus fast. I think that could be the first thing that I would say. I mean, everybody can say enjoy the moment while you play and love your passion as much as you can. But I think what I'll follow up with that one is that the passion doesn't have to end. There's multiple ways to continue your passion. Obviously, playing is the first and foremost for most athletes, but the passion for sports and for your community can go far beyond your playing days. And especially nowadays, like I say, with engagement or foundation and charities, there's so many good people out there doing so many good things that it can really extend beyond your playing days. So follow your passion right till the end, and I would say continue it as long as you can.
Great advice. Okay, one last question for you. Nice, easy one. Ready? If you had the opportunity to have dinner and drinks with 3 people, alive or dead, who would you pick?
That's a great question, and I've been asked this a long time ago, but let's see if I can update it. Drinks or dinner. One, it's going to be an interesting one, but I think just because of what I said is the rise and fall is as Lance Armstrong would be one. You can say what you want about what happened in the industry, but his discipline and passion and drive for the sport was remarkable. So I think that would be one. Yeah, a little bit of emotional one. I know this is crazy, but I had a grandmother just lived to 96 years old that just passed this past fall, and she was. They say that less than 1% of the population in this world laughs enough. She was a part of that 1%. So every bad day harder day that I have to have a dinner with her, and she's the best sense of humor going. So I'll take her as well again. And I'd love to be a part of that 1% that do laugh a lot more than I do, or most of us do. And you said 3 people?
Yeah. Come on.
And the third one, that's a good one. Yeah, I'll say just because he's on the news every day right now is Elon Musk. Let's go with that one. Just
That's
because
actually, yeah.
the guy can you know what? I keep talking about failing fast. That guy seems to just throw paint at the wall, and whatever sticks, he goes with. And we just don't hear about a lot of his failures. But the guy's doing 18 things at once, and we seem to just hear about his successes. But I'd love to know what's going through that guy's head right now,
Oh, a whole lot, and he might take up
or what makes him
the whole
tick.
thing. Yeah.
Always coaches always talk athletes like what makes them tick, what gets them going. Like I think I think that'd be an awfully interesting conversation with him at the helm right now.
I thought it was pretty interesting how, what was it, a few days ago, Twitter was saying, no, thanks, Elon, we don't want to be taken over. And today it's like, eh, yeah, we could use the money, you know. So you're right. It's really an
Yeah,
interesting how that's all emerging. Well, listen, I truly appreciate your
yeah,
time today, without a doubt, Phil. I'm really excited about what you're doing because you're still obviously a very young guy, and the sky's the limit for what you are growing with Struttur Sports. And I encourage anybody out there, if you have, I'm allowed to say it. I don't know if Phil wants to say it or is comfortable saying it, but if any of you have access to people who want to maybe throw a few dollars in the direction of Struttur Sports. He is absolutely in fundraising mode right now, and it's the kind of company that I believe it looks like it really could pay off dividends quite dramatically. It's a platform that once created, and it is, then it's really, again, the sky's the limit for the platform itself too. So. Congratulations on all you've done so far, Phil. It's really been quite impressive, and I do think that you're on the cusp of something really fantastic here.
yeah. As what I tell, just on that note, from investors, if there is anybody that interested in talking or connecting with somebody, it's we're investing in the next generation of athletes. At the end of the day, we're going to take today's emerging players and help build their communities, but ultimately, it's so we can have sports of the future. I don't want to touch on it too much, but we love to talk about the sports tech that's happening in today's world and all these crazy cool data and analytics that go along with it. But if there's no players to play in the future, there's not going to be much to track. So there's a lot of team sports that are failing with participation out there, and we need to up the ante for increasing that participation again. So let's bring players closer to them and build up their communities, and we'll invest in them.
Well, this is why I think I'm going to talk to you about collaborating with Every Kid Sports because their big mission and their mantra is to get more kids playing, and the more kids that play, as you said, it rises that way. So that's fantastic. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
My email, just phil@struttersports.com. To anybody, and obviously LinkedIn is a great resource as well, and I'd be more than happy to get back to you as well.
Perfect. Um, well, look, I truly appreciate your time here. Thanks again for being here in the Win Again Club Room. It's part of winagainacademy.com. You can see everything that's happening there, including our upcoming events, which I'll tell you super fast, includes a sports and business networking event next Tuesday. And then the following Tuesday, we're actually doing something involving student athletes. It's going to be a very cool event. More on that in the next few days. But Phil, thank you so much for being here. Truly appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was great talking, Mark, and thanks for having me.
All
Thanks
right,
everybody
great.
for listening, and hopefully it was something worthwhile.
Of course it was. All right, we're going to see you back at the tables now. Thanks again. Hang around for a bit.